Shavua Tov, what is the secret weapon of the Jewish nation? There is a mysterious story in this week's Parsha, which is proof that we require the oral tradition to understand what the written Torah is telling us, because this story is so puzzling and mysterious that when you read it, even though you understand the words, you have no idea what's going on. The night before Yaakov is to encounter his brother Esav, who may yet harbor murderous intentions towards him, he has arranged everything with the family. He's put them in different places, and he's getting everything set up, and he finds himself alone. And then he is set upon by a mysterious man who attacks him, and he is fighting with him all through the night till the morning, at which point the man smites him in his thigh, causes him an injury, he has to limp. And then the man says, the sun is coming up, I've got to go. Where does he have to go? To eat breakfast? What's the story with that? And Jacob says, I will not let you go until you bless me. And the man blesses him by changing his name from Yaakov to Yisrael. Yisrael meaning Kisarita im Elohim v'anashim v'tuchal. You are now Israel. You have struggled and prevailed with God and with people, and you have shown your ability. What is this whole story about? Why is Yaakov alone at the beginning? Why fight throughout the night? Who is this man, Bechlal, who seems to not be a man, but rather an angel, as the rabbis all agree? Why is he injuring Yaakov at the dawn? Why does he have to leave when the sun comes up? And what's the deal with the change of name? So the consensus among most commentaries is that this is not just a simple fight. This is a prophetic vision of the entire history of the Jewish nation, right up to the redemption. Okay, so now we have a framework. Let's see what we can learn from it. Jacob was alone the night before. This is very true that very often the Jewish nation finds itself feeling quite alone. I believe that the Senate Majority Leader, Senator Schumer from New York, said the same thing in Congress just last week, that with all of the anti-Semitism, Jews are feeling pretty alone these days. But there's a remarkable commentary of the Rashbam who says that why was Jacob alone at that moment? Because he was trying to run away. Yes, Jacob was trying to flee. He didn't feel that he could successfully confront Esav. Why not? This already points to something with the names. Jacob's name means Yaakov. He was grasping onto the heel, Yaakov, of his brother Esav. He had a feeling of inferiority, and he says it in so many words. I should say word. He says katonti. In his prayer to God, he says, God, you promised all these things, but I am not worthy. Katonti, I am too small. And that word says volumes about Jacob's self-appreciation. There are two traditions in the synagogue about how to read that word katonti. When we read the Torah, we have melody for it, and there's a competing tradition. What is the note that's supposed to go on that word katonti, which means I am too small? Some say it's a revi'i, which is a low note, katonti, and that makes sense because Jacob is saying, I am too small and too lowly to deserve to prevail. So that note makes sense. But there's another tradition, and we read it in our synagogue the other way, and that is to do an azla geresh, which is a high, proud note, katonti. But that's a little incongruous. I am very small and lowly. Ha ha! I'm so humble and modest. It's very strange. Why do we read with such a high and proud note? So this is the essence of Yaakov. His mouth is saying katonti. I am too small. Because he felt that way. But the Torah is telling us, you're not small at all. You're quite great. You have great stature. Katonti. You are not Yaakov, as the angel will say to him. You are not somebody who's lying down grasping someone else's heel. You are Yisrael. You have prevailed against God and men and shown your ability. You are far greater than you believe yourself to be. So to the Rashbam, basically the man is to the Rashbam's interpretation, the man is saying to Yaakov, you shouldn't run away. You have to face this battle because you will prevail. Now, let's go a little further. The nighttime is the exile. That is clear. All of our sources always compare the nighttime to exile. And the man struggling against us are the forces that seek to destroy the nation of Israel. As we say in the Haggadah of Pesach, in every generation they have risen against us to destroy us, but the most holy, blessed be He, delivers us from their hands. Now, how did this guy look? What did he look like? Again, the oral Torah, the rabbis have an argument. What did he look like? What was his costume? One opinion is that he looked like a mugger. Well, that makes sense. I mean, the guy is coming and physically attacking Yaakov. That's a mugger. But there's another opinion that he looked like a scholar, a Talmid Chacham, a sage. Wow. Why is that the interpretation? How is that person dangerous? But that person may be even more dangerous than the mugger. And the anti-Semites have tried to destroy us in two ways. One is overt hostility and hatred and violence. That's the mugger. That's the better of the two, one could say, because at least from that one we know that we need to beware. But when they come with scholarly statements, with an embrace and with arguments, our culture, look how advanced our Greek culture is. We have aesthetics. The Greeks happened to be morally corrupt. They were pagans, but at the time they were the thing. And a lot of Jews fell prey to that. Beware of the hug, perhaps even more than beware of the sword or the baseball bat or whatever other weapon they may choose to bring. And so throughout our history we have faced both of those challenges, the overt enemies and those who tried to embrace us and say, just join us, be together with us, look at our morals, our way of life, and abandon your ancient religion and your ancient beliefs. Why not just be like everybody else? These dangers are both there throughout all of the night of our exile. And that's significant, the nighttime. Because the anti-Semite needs nighttime in order to succeed, because nighttime has two elements that the anti-Semite uses very efficiently. One of them is fear. Nighttime is certainly a time of fear, and the anti-Semite causes people to fear the Jews, because the Jews are plotting their protocols of elders of Zion and all of that rot. But fear can only take root if it's been planted in a bed of ignorance, which is also nighttime, as it were, to walk in darkness. When there is ignorance, then fear can take root, and that is when we can have danger to our nation. And that happens throughout the night. But the dawn, after the long exile, began to show, as Jews began in the late 19th century and the early 20th century, to flow back to the land of Zion, to the land of Eretz Israel. The dawn was beginning, and the anti-Semites sense that when the dawn comes, they will have no more power, because the fear will disappear and the ignorance will disappear. And so then the anti-Semites became desperate. Perhaps during the 12 years, the number 12 is reminiscent of the 12 sons of Jacob. During the 12 years that the Nazis ruled Germany, that's when their most intense attack on Yaakov, on the nation of Jacob, the nation of Israel, took place. That's when we were hit hardest in our thigh. That's when we were limping, when a large part of our people was torn apart from us. Our hearts were broken, and we could not walk straight after that terrible blow, right as the dawn was coming. But the dawn cannot be stopped. And the sun did rise, and then the enemies realized, we have to go, we have to disappear, we have no longer got the fear and the ignorance, we will no longer be able to prevail. And Yaakov says to him right after that difficult time when he was injured, he says to him, then bless me. And the man says, yes, your name will no longer be Yaakov, you will now become Yisrael, you will become Israel. Medinat Yisrael, the state of Israel, the nation of Israel, comes back to life. And that is the prophecy of the entire history of the Jewish people in this epic, mysterious struggle over that long night. The long night of our exile, and as the dawn comes and our redemption becomes clearer and clearer, it is all foretold in this mysterious story. How are we supposed to behave? What are we to learn from this story? Aside from the fact that we are not Yaakov, aside from the fact that we have to realize that we are now Yisrael, we must have the confidence to stand up and confront our enemies as we are doing as we speak now. But there is something we can do and must do that is powerful and efficient, more than anything else. Yaakov prepared for three things when he was going to meet Esav. He prepared to bribe him, and he prepared militarily to fight or flee, and he did prayer. And that is the element. When Jacob, at the end of his life, is telling his son Joseph, I took an extra portion from the Amorite by my sword and my bow, b'charbi uv'kashti, by my sword and my bow. we don't find such a fight that Yaakov fought with a sword and bow. What does it mean? So Onkelos tells us it's not the sword and bow of everybody else. It's the sword and bow, the weapons of war that Yaakov has, which are unique to him. And what is that? Says Onkelos, tzloti uvaoti, my prayer and my request. The power of Am Yisrael is in our prayers to Hashem. When Yaakov comes to get the blessing from Isaac, and he's making believe he's Esav, and he has on his arms the rough substance to make Yitzchak think that he's Esav. So Yitzchak is seeing the conflict between the hands of Esav, because that's the way Esav, the enemy, functions, by his hands, by violence, and the voice of Jacob, because that's how Yaakov functions in the world, by our voice, by our Torah, by our morals, and most powerfully by our prayers. And so Yitzchak is basically the subject of this battle. Who does he believe? Who's going to prevail in his mind, the hands of Esav or the voice of Jacob? And he believes the voice of Jacob. The voice of Jacob is powerful. I've heard from friends who are serving in the Gaza Strip that there are synagogues in Gaza that are now currently functioning. What an amazing thing. There was an article in the Jerusalem Post about one of them called Beit Avraham. There's a sign there, Shacharit at this time, Mincha, there's an early Mincha, a late Mincha, and then there's Mariv. And my friend tells me that there are numerous sites that have been designated as synagogues in the Gaza Strip. We may have the most powerful weapons, and we do, and we certainly have the most amazing soldiers using them. But these synagogues, the prayers, the Tehillim that every shul in the world is saying, the personal and public prayers that every Jew is uttering, these are the most potent weapons. These are the cherev and keshet. These are the sword and the bow that will lead to the victory of Am Yisrael as the sun continues to rise and the redemption continues to unfold. May we have besorot tovot yeshuot v'nechamot, good tidings, comfort, peace, victory, and success. Bimheira v'yameinu, quickly in our days. And this week we have Hanukkah. May the lights of the Hanukkah candles enlighten the entire world. Shavuot Tov.